Keep playing.
Welcome back to another episode of Eagles Weekly. Here are your hosts, Brett, Haas, Mac, and Jack. How we feeling, fellas?
All right, welcome back to Eagles Weekly, episode 22, the Doug Flutie episode, powered by Believe Network, presented by Home Field Apparel. I'm one of your hosts, Brett Ryder, joined today by international marketing guru Mac Hutchinson, our ACC athlete, Jack Cyberlick, and special guest today, we are joined by Kevin Stone of Eagle Action and New England Football Journal. Boys, how we doing?
Good, man. Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
The Flutie episode. Nice call, Brett.
Good touch, Brett. Good touch.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have you back on, Kevin. It always makes me miss the football press box a little bit extra when we're all together.
Soon, man. It's coming.
It's soon.
Was it 130? Like
130
days? 130 days till kickoff, folks.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Sounds about right.
I mean, the expectations, I would say, I mean, this is my fourth year covering the team. And I don't think the expectations nor the talent pool has ever been as high as this. We had a little bit of a discussion last week, just in terms of the performance of spring practice, which was, met with a little grievance, I would say, from other people. I just want to go on record now and say I am a big fan of both quarterbacks. I feel very confident with either one starting. It's never been a thing of who I prefer, who I think is ultimately, going to be more successful. You plug in either of those quarterbacks in that system, and I think you're going to be more than satisfied. With the production, especially for someone like Kevin, who is there, just about all the practices, right? So you definitely have a good understanding, along with Mac, of just really, what's been going on, who's been kind of sticking out and things like that. And definitely want to kick it to you and Mac to kind of get, more of an insider perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Me and Mac always talk. We're the only ones that really show up every day. But so it's nice to talk to people that know kind of actually what's going on. But I'll start with the quarterbacks. It's more of a competition than I ever thought it was going to be. And that's mostly because I went in just sort of assuming they'd let Dylan get his feet wet and sort of take it slowly. But again, Mac, you can speak to this. Since day one, It's been even split. Sometimes it's been, Grayson will have the better day or more snaps. Dylan will do that, the next practice. So they kept it very even and very balanced. And you guys know Bill O'Brien likes competition. So I do think it's a real sort of question right now. Going in, I did, and it's my fault for assuming, but I figured the way Grayson handled last year would sort of carry a lot more weight than maybe anything else. Look, he earned the team's trust really at this time last year. So he's been a model citizen for BC, especially given, the complete opposite of the other quarterback that was here, and just sort of how he treated people and how he left. So I do think it's a real competition. I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan ended up starting, just because he was a Bill O'Brien guy. He did get recruited by Bill, so that pre-existing relationship might outweigh what Grayson did last year. But as far as I'm concerned, it's neck and neck, and we'll see how it plays out in August. But I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Dylan. But I personally think Grayson hasn't done anything to lose that job either.
Yeah. I mean, me and Kevin have been aligning on this pretty much the entire spring ball. I mean, again, I just want to say, awesome that you're on the pod, Kev. I feel, just so everyone knows this, Kevin Stone is the guy that shows up. I think people need to understand that of all the outlets, Eagles Daily included, Kevin's consistently, and he covers football all over New England. He covers the New England Patriots, everything, a million different sports, BC Lax. It goes on and on and on. he consistently shows up. So again, I just want to give a shout out to our followers. If you're not following Kevin Stone's stuff, I mean, this guy has got more hustle than anyone I know in the sports media business. So thanks, Kevin, again, for coming on. But it's great to have you on because, first of all, last year you were the only guy, too, speaking of all the media outlets that cover BC, that were early on Grayson James. And you were consistently covering him, last spring. And I think, similarly, going into this spring, I had the same feeling as you. Grayson's earned it. Love the guy. The fans love him. He's completely loyal. And I think you're right. Into the spring ball, we saw this too. He didn't do anything to lose it. I think the shocking thing was how quickly Dylan Lonergan was able to come in and be able to understand the offense and run all these things. The same way that, obviously I was a fan of Shaker too. It was interesting to see how equal the playing time and snaps that these players got. And I'm talking about all three quarterbacks, but when we're just talking about Dylan and Grayson in that competition for QB1, it not only is it close, I said on the podcast last week, I think Dylan is, a little bit ahead coming out of spring ball. And to me, that is as shocking, for me as any other fan listening to this podcast, because I felt the same way. Grayson coming in, loyal, he deserves the spot. He, we're all rooting for him. We're all big fans of him. But to see Dylan be able to come in here, young guy and understand the offense, it's clear to me that he's got those skills and intangibles that you can't really teach. He's got the height, he's got the speed, he's got the quick release, he's got, clearly, I think, more upside. And I think that's when you're talking about politics, Kev, you just mentioned, not only because he's a Bill O'Brien guy, he brought him here. I think you're thinking, okay, he's got also more upside. So Bill O'Brien being a developer, that's kind of where I'm looking at it coming out of spring. It's not necessarily that Grayson did anything wrong. If anything, he improved. You're just looking at kind of the future of the program and where this is kind of all settling.
Before we even continue for this year, right? So they talk about, or there was someone who said last year that if Grayson James didn't get hurt, then in summer camp that he would have beat out TC.
That was
me. That
That's
was
Kev.
you? That
was Kev.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
Really?
So, and I've said this I think I've talked to you guys about this on game days plenty. Bill O'Brien came in so late last year. The fact that Tommy didn't go in the portal, there's a sense of loyalty there now, right? All right, this kid didn't bail on me. I have a quarterback. Let's see if it works. Let's see if we can make it work. And they did for 6 weeks, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tommy's true colors sort of came out when he wasn't playing well. So no, if Grayson doesn't go down, I do think he would have started, but that's with the caveat of where was the loyalty factor with Bill O'Brien not trying to rock the cradle with that locker room, 2 months in. So
right.
I think he deserved to. I'm not necessarily sure he would have, but there's a good chance he might have.
That's interesting. And it kind of brings to the table now of he's so, he has played the game. Bill O'Brien does, appreciate loyalty. And I think that's really a testament of probably how well Dylan Lonergan has played in spring, that he's even being considered for the, starting role thus far.
It's just the speed in which he got the offense down. And I guess it shouldn't be, like Max said, the quick release is one thing. I do think he has a quicker release than Grayson, only slightly. But it's the ability to come here when he came here and then pick up the offense like he's been here for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, being a Bama guy, that probably helps. I'm sure there has to be some similarities. Mm-hmm. But for him to jump into that competition, feet first the way he did is impressive.
Yeah. I feel like Kev too, I think, obviously I have my personal opinion and you have your personal opinion, but I think what's probably good for, what we talk about usually when we're on the sidelines of spring practice is what is Bill thinking and what is his perspective on all of this? Because you talk about the politics of it, you look at the upside, you look at development. My question to you is, I know we've kind of discussed this personally, but what is your prediction as far as this playing out? Because are you expecting like an announcement of, Bill to going into the summer ball already announcing a starter, or do you expect that like in the summer, or do you expect them to wait until kickoff, strategically for that? Like, I'm thinking like, that is going to influence a lot of what I think his philosophy is, development first. And I think under Hafley and under Adazio, I think I was under more of the impression, oh, they'll wait till kickoff. They need every advantage in the book. But it seems to me, we've been surprised by Bill sometimes where he just flat out announces things, because he's more about like, hey, the team needs to know who's leading and I need to get developing. And like, this program is like not there yet. Like, we need to do so many more things before we start worrying about like if we're naming the starter too early or not. So I don't know. What's your take on that? Because I'm interested in your perspective. I know we've talked about this internally, but I want the fans to kind of hear your perspective on that.
So, look, if they were getting ready for Florida State again, I think you'd keep it quiet. It's freaking Fordham. Like,
that's what I'm thinking.
I don't think they need to keep it quiet this year. I think the team might already know, frankly.
Right.
I don't have the inside to that, but it's just going into the offseason, given how things went last year, I feel like the set leader needs to be in place, to your point. But in terms of, it's a good question, because I could also see him kind of stringing us along, but telling the team,
Right.
The first day of camp. So I hope it plays out throughout camp. Like, I hope Grayson gets a fair shot, and that whole, prior relationship doesn't sort of take over their thinking with Dylan. But I think it's too early to know. Again, you don't necessarily. It's Fordham. Like, you don't have to hide much from Fordham.
Right.
If they do, it's a problem. But then again, there's no reason to say it to the media until the first game week, I guess. I think he meets somewhere in the middle. I think we learned maybe 2 weeks into camp, something like that. I mean, who knows? We might not get to see it like we did last year. If you remember right, there was 28 straight days of open practice for us. I don't think that's happening again. Last year was the first year they wanted to play nice with the media, so they're going to keep it. And if you remember, Mac, halfway through the year, we were not in practice anymore. It was just press conference.
I do remember that.
For the first 20 minutes, like it was under Hafley. So I do think they're going to keep things relatively quiet, or at least from us. But I think the team will know pretty early.
It's interesting though. It's glad you're on, Kev, because just like for people to understand, there's like what we think. Like, there's always what Bill wants to do. As far as like from Bill's perspective, and then there's a media perspective. So like for a media fan, we get frustrated by a lot of these things sometimes, but at the same time, when you look at it from Bill's perspective, you're like, yeah, like I'm going to keep these things close. So it's, as we're covering this team, it's been very, for me, interesting to try and figure that out, that kind of like, balance between how much are we putting out there, how much are we not. But I think Bill has, the nice thing about Bill O'Brien is that he's got a great understanding of Boston and Boston sports media. And I think, like you said, Kev, him bringing us on to the spring practice, but then at a certain point being like, hey, once it gets to real time, and we're talking about like August into September, I don't care about the media. I don't care how good the relationship is. This team first.
I think it was after the Missouri game where we shut things down last year, if I remember right. But no, look, I'm not complaining. It's far more access than I've had under Jeff Hafley. I didn't really cover Adazio. I came in his last year, so I'm not complaining by any means. It's been nice.
Oh,
yeah. But it's funny. We've been joking. It's Foxborough 2.0 down there,
totally
and it should be. Like, they're treating it like an NFL team now, and if they want to be taken seriously, they should. So it's a balance for us too.
Yeah, we've been saying that since day one. Every spring practice or every practice is just, it's an NFL operation. You have Burge and Jarian obviously at the top there. All the relationships are super professional, and everything's just, it's really refreshing. Like, and we've said this before. So
I mean, you can see it even on game day, the way they warm up. It's very NFL like, and the way they kind of go about it from that perspective too. So it's really no surprise, and it's really what they need. That's really what this program's kind of need to get that proverbial kick in the ass and get to that next level, which they haven't had. And especially like with the talent that they have now, and the competition's great. And, Mac, you talked about it last week. There's talent across the board. There's not really a group. I mean, you could argue inside linebacker is light or maybe defensive ends, but that's a case where someone's going to step up and hopefully take over that position group. But I mean, across the board, and even with the offensive line, like how does it look from the offensive line? I know they got a couple of kids. I think one of them from Merrimack and a couple other smaller type of schools, but how does the offensive line look, especially with losing Ozzie and Drew Kendall from it?
Yeah, Jack was nice enough to put all this roster together, and I kind of helped fill in some of it. But I know, Kevin, last podcast I mentioned pretty much we have depth at most of the position groups, which is the first time we've been able to say that in a long time. The one big weakness, I think the most obvious weakness was linebackers. But you can already see in the recruiting, in the portal, he's trying to picked up a linebacker. He's picked up defensive linemen. But you just mentioned, Brett, the offensive line. This is something me and Kev have kind of switched back and forth on, all through spring practice. Is this offensive line strong? And at the beginning, I was concerned, and I'll let Kev, talk on this in a second. And then towards the middle, I was like, wow, this offensive line is coming together. They have a lot more depth than I was thinking. There's a clear, starting five and then depth behind them. And then towards the end, and maybe this is because the defensive line was starting to really come through with what Tim Lewis was doing. There was some legit battles there, and then some concerning things on the offensive line that we were looking at. So, that is still a concern going into the season because that, offensive line is everything, So, but yeah, Kev, your thoughts on that? And I think we talked about this before, but it's still kind of up in the air question, but you're looking at it a little more positive than you did for spring.
The biggest reason for that is a bad Applebaum. If you listen to Ozzie Trapillo and Drew Kendall at the NFL Combine, the amount of credit that they've given him, and you guys remember the amount of crap that Applebaum got when he came back, and his first year back after being with the Dolphins, that line was riddled with injuries. And they had just lost Zion Johnson, Alec Lindstrom. I think I'm missing a name or two in there too. So he deserves a ton of credit just for the development of guys. But I think they're deeper than most people think. The experience is a big thing for me. I mean, you still have Dwayne Alec, you still have Logan Taylor, you still have Kevin Klein,
Drew Bowery.
Drew Bowery. I was trying to think, and Eric Daughtry as well. So that's veteran guys. That's guys that have continuity that have been here for a while. I will say the Otto Hess departure was a little surprising to me.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Because given the position, one injury and that kid's going in the game. I mean, how many times throughout the years have we seen them have to go 4 or 5 deep, at least at the offensive line? So that was surprising, but I do think there's depth there. I wouldn't be surprised if someone else is coming in the portal. And just to jump back to the linebackers real quick, or I don't even know if we said linebackers, but I'm going to. That's the only place I'm really worried about. Look, you do have Bryce Steele, but I don't know what you're getting out of him still. You can't expect much out of a guy that came back from what he came back from until we see it consistently. So I think Bam Crouch has a chance to be one of their best players. But him and Owen McGowan missed spring ball, coming back from an injury. So I think Hugh Hutchins, he's technically an edge, but he might be your best playmaker on defense.
Yeah.
You can move him everywhere, basically. So I think he's going to be valuable to that core. A kid like Vaughn Pemberton, who's a freaking running back transfer from Ball State, was making plays all over the field in camp. Billy Van Pelt, Juan Zabal, who got a scholarship before spring, he stands out. Like, and Mac, I've said this to you 1,000 times. He looks like a linebacker. Like, he's a terrifying human being when he's in pads. So I think, again, they got to stay healthy. They need to be healthy for the start of the season, and that's a big if. But you just added a kid from Michigan today, too, and Jason Hewitt. So that's a huge addition. They ordered a kid from a D3 school, Mike Straka, I believe. I can't remember what the school was. It was in Wisconsin. But they see some needs there, too. So they know it. But otherwise, like Max said, I think they're deep everywhere. And I know we'll get into other positions in a bit. But if you're going to be worried, it's linebacker. And I'm probably, 60% worried right now. I think there's depth everywhere except for there. And even then, if they're healthy, I think they're going to be okay.
So the Von Pemberton, are you saying that he was playing linebacker?
Yeah, he was a running back from Ball State that came in. And again, Matt can attest to this. The kid had a pass breakup a day, it seemed like covering
the whole
running backs, covering running backs over the middle, or receivers coming over on crossers. The kid just made plays. So obviously, you don't want to rely on a transfer running back as a starting linebacker. I'm sure fans would have a stroke with that, given sort of where linebackers have been the last few years. But if the kid has to play, I think he can.
That's right up Jack's alley, considering his brother is a former
Brother of
Hooper.
former walk-on Quinn Pemberton.
That's
I
right.
do remember seeing that transfer notification. I looked him up. He was like, I don't know, so it's 6'2", 240 or something. I'm like, that's a big run. That's a big boy in the backfield. So it is cool to see a guy like that in linebacker. I do want to ask Mac and Kevin. There seems to be like level of concern. Kevin, you said you're 60% worried, but the linebacker position, what effect does your health in spring ball, like what does that tell you? Like, do you think, like for example, like Bam Crouch, O McGowan missing most of spring ball, does that have how much bearing do you think that has on their kind of potential availability for into the summer, late summer, and into the fall?
Mac, it's your show. Go first.
Yeah, so I feel like the injury thing is tough because Bill said, they're gonna be available in the summer, and we can trust that or not. And there's only so much he's going to talk on injury, and we completely understand that from the media perspective. But there is a lot of injuries, so it's clear that they had to do what they had to do the same way they had to walk on, be a starting linebacker last year.
Yeah.
What I'll say on it though is, they definitely need to get healthy. They definitely understand based on who they just picked up in the transfer portal. We'll get that, get into that in a second. But you got to trust the development, because I think a few things that Kevin mentioned, whether it's developing linebackers like they did, bringing that running back to linebacker, every one of the coaches, whether it's Tim Lewis, whether it's obviously Bill O'Brien being developers, you look at every one of these coaches that have been able to develop. So, Kevin just mentioned Matt Applebaum, and before we kind of go further into the needs here, I just wanted to mention, when you go down that list of Bowery, Taylor, Alec, Klein, another one of those names, Erks Doherty, which Kevin mentioned as well. He was a defensive lineman that Matt Applebaum.
I didn't recognize that name, so I had to look him up.
Yeah, he brought him in to be offensive lineman. He's most likely going to start at right guard this year. So when you talk about a developer like Matt Applebaum, after the disaster that was the 2021 series, season with the offensive line, how he's been able to develop that over the last 3 years to the point where not only do we have a solid starting five, we have depth behind them. You're going into even the linebacker position knowing, hey, this team clearly knows how to develop. They know what their strengths and, more importantly, what their weaknesses are, and they do what they got to do. And I think that's the best perspective that I can take, when you're looking at like even the linebacker position, because you even saw what they had to do last year when they had no one. They're seeing what they had to do in spring ball when you had a bunch of injuries. They're going not only into the portal, but they're able to develop guys even from other positions.
So to that point first, Mac, I'll say it speaks to their desire to recruit versatility, right? Like we joke it's Foxborough 2.0, but they had players that could do everything. So I think that's just sort of their background coming into
the Patriots thing. It's like you don't draft for position, you draft for talent, right?
Correct. But to Jack's original question, I don't think it means much. I think with those guys, look, we didn't see Amari Jackson, we didn't see Bam, we didn't see Owen, we didn't see a bunch of guys for a reason. It's precautionary more than anything.
Totally.
Like those guys don't need spring ball as much as some of the newer guys or the younger guys. So I'm not too worried about them. One name we did mention was Jalen Blackwell. He got hurt day one of camp. And in complete honesty, we were terrified to ask about it until like week 3. And Bill, we assumed he was done for the year, but Bill said, look, he's going to rehab and hopefully work his way back. If you have him too, who came on strong last year, well, now that depth is a lot better. So that's a huge, huge question for that linebacking group. But to your original question, I'm not too worried about those guys that miss time. There's no need to rush them back right now.
Yeah, I totally understand, like, it being precautionary, but you hear Bill say, these guys will be fine, but at the same time, there definitely was, like, it seemed like a concerted effort in the portal, especially the last couple of weeks to, pick up, that D3 guy, the guy from Michigan,
100%.
which is like, you can't have enough, you can never have, enough depth, especially linebacker, such an important position. So I was just wondering kind of what you guys kind of thought about that, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see like which guys are able to make that recovery the soonest, because I mean, yeah, looking at like these names, like it does you do see a lot of depth across the board, so you'd hope like linebacker can, especially like that front seven being so important, can really
It's
contend.
interesting. It's interesting though, Jack, because last week I said, well, an obvious weakness is linebacker,
Yeah.
and then maybe potentially DL. And you look at the portal additions, right? They get
Well,
Jason.
since last week,
they
pretty-
get a linebacker
pretty
from
obvious,
Michigan,
yeah.
and then they get a defensive lineman from Wake Forest, Chris Maribel. And I guess those two I want to ask you, Kev, because you did some nice profiles on them. Talk about the Michigan linebacker. He's a former 4-star top recruit, Jason Woollett. He's got 3 years eligibility left. Both of these guys have, by the way, a lot of eligibility left. And then you have Wake Forest defensive lineman Chris Maribel. So you're talking about two guys that potentially either make impact this year, or at least you can develop and have depth there, because clearly we need depth. But yeah, Kevin, I know you wrote a few profiles on them. You just talk to there, and obviously I think Bill's seeing what we're seeing. Those are the two position groups that need a little more depth, obviously.
So both guys bring size, which you can never have enough of. But the biggest thing to me is it's guys that either went to big name programs or had offers from big name programs, now picking BC. So you're doing something right. Now, granted, it's guys that haven't really seen the field. So that's probably the reason they think they can play right away. And it also speaks to what Brett was just saying, or what Jack was just saying, is they're acknowledging that there's holes. Like, they're acknowledging that they need some depth in certain places, which you have to respect. So, but it's funny. I honestly, and Mac, you know this, I think the D line is kind of snacked. You have Ty Clemens, you have Owen Stoudemire. Who am I missing? George Rooks is still there. I feel like he's been there for 10 years now.
I know. I can't believe he is. I saw that. I was thinking that earlier too.
So look, you can't replace Donovan Ezeraka with one guy. Although I do think Q Hutchins is the closest thing you have to Donovan right now. But in terms of like a group, I think they're going to be fine there. There's still, again, there's no Cam Horsley either. Let's not forget about him, or Nenawak Paula. Like, you have some legit bodies to fill there, but I do think you also have enough depth right now. And again, they're adding to it because they see what they need. I think that group might be fine. Again, health, you're assuming health across the board, but I hope I don't sound too homerish, but aside from linebackers, I think this team has a ton of depth across the board.
Mm-hmm. What's the lowdown on the Michigan linebacker? I'm sorry, Mac.
No, I was just saying, in the same framework, just to reiterate what Kevin said, I think what gets us to be more positive on the defensive line is their performance the last 2 weeks of practice. I mean, Kev, they were taking it to the offensive line, where that's the only reason I even brought up the offensive line and being concerned, because of how well the defensive line was performing. And then you talk about replacing Donovan. That was my first question to Tim Lewis this season was, hey, how are you going to replace Donovan Ezeraku? And the answer was maybe multiple guys. But you look at Q Hutchins, like you said, man, there was one practice where he was so like unhinged, where the coaches had to like chill him out because he was so locked in. I mean, he was like about to rip heads off on the offensive line. This guy has got that it factor, and you can see he's taken to another level this year. So just to put the defensive line thing to rest, like, yeah, it's always nice to have more depth, and I think that's obviously the way that line plays is always good to have depth on the line. But yeah, you're looking a lot more positive on that front, and you're looking at, okay, linebacker position, what can we do there? Because again, because of the injuries, we just don't know who's available and who's ready.
And just on the D line, there's names we forgot. Like, I was just thinking, Sedarius McConnell kept showing up. I don't have a roster in front of me, so I'm going to butcher his name. But Oni Musi or whatever. So I can't pronounce his name, but
Yeah, Oni
um,
Nawasasi.
thank you.
I butcher shit all the time. You're you're
And then
perfectly good.
one of my favorite guys of all camp, and I covered him at Merrimack, was Favor Bate. This kid was everywhere every day, either flying off the edge, stuffing a run on the edge, or like whatever it is. That kid's gonna be a playmaker too. So again, there is depth there.
Kev, I had a quick question though about the edge. Besides Hutchins, is it Clive Wilson that's going to be on the other side, or who's the other edge? Right
So that's
now?
another name I forgot. Another guy you can throw in there. Honestly, I could see it being Bate just based off what I saw in camp. I mean, you saw him.
Right. He was all
there were times where he was dominating as a pass rusher as well. So I'd watch out for him, but they're gonna rotate guys. You guys know this. There's a point of emphasis, especially for a program that wants to get guys NFL ready on being versatile and being able to play multiple positions. So I think you're gonna see bodies in all different spots.
What's the lowdown on the Michigan linebacker?
Came out as originally committed to Cincinnati, flipped to Michigan. He's from Ohio. He was one of the best players coming out of Ohio. So now that I think of it, talking out loud, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some ties to someone on that staff being out of Ohio. So again, another playmaker, and it's good to see them acknowledging that there is some depth problems in certain spots, and they're addressing it right away.
And Kev, to talk about the portal, I know we mentioned people on the other side leaving, like Otto Hess, but like besides Otto Hess, to be honest, like there hasn't been anyone of note really that has left. There was no max exodus. I mean, we're already like 8 days into this portal. I think there's only like 2 more days left of it open, and you haven't seen anyone of like significance, enter the portal and you saw this last year, even in Bill O'Brien's first year. There was no max exodus. He was able to basically retain everyone. Thoughts on that. But then also there is this. I didn't know if you've had time to look at this, crazy kind of a lawsuit that's happening in California with the NCAA. But there's rumors, at least talk of potentially a 105 roster limit. My thinking was, are we going to have more players? Or is Bill O'Brien and company going to try and push out some players if that ends up being a reality? But you didn't see that at all. So you're almost looking at this like they're thinking it's going to be grandfathered in or not. But what's your take on, at least you guys take on, Bill being able to retain players, and then also kind of where do you see, him possibly having to do with like getting rid of players that are walk-ons and things like that?
So for me, it's simple. It's the staff. It's knowing that if you come to BC, odds are if you really want to go to the NFL, they're going to get you ready for it. I mean, how many guys are we going to see from BC this weekend? You're going to see at least 4 get drafted. In Neto and Donovan and Ozzie and who am I missing? Oh, Kim Horsley. So you're going to see at least 4 guys go. So if you're a kid, look, we've joked about this on game days. You're not selling the stadium to anybody. Like if you're coming here and you just visited, Clemson or some other major stadium, you're not coming here to play in front of 30,000 people on Saturdays. You're coming because you want to go to the NFL. So I think that's the biggest draw right now. It's just the experience that staff has.
So we saw last year with Reed Harris, right? And he was like the long ball, explosive play king with Tommy. And then once Grayson came over and he was starting, you really saw that rapport. Like you really saw a more complete Reed Harris from a production standpoint. Are there receivers that are kind of stepping up that you're kind of seeing the same rapport with either quarterback? But does it kind of look this like is Reed and Lewis Bond, are they kind of the 2 top dogs in the room? And are there any other guys who are kind of sticking out just in terms of playmaking ability so far?
I was hoping we would get to the receivers. Mac knows they're by far my favorite group on this team. Them and the running backs, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But big 3 right now is Bond, Skeet, and Harris. People forget about Jaden Skeet because he was hurt last year.
Mm-hmm.
Having covered his whole high school career and having seen some of the plays he made in camp, if that's your big three and you're healthy, I put that trio up against anyone in the ACC. I honestly do. But guys like Luke McLaughlin, guys like Ismail Zamore, who we haven't even talked about, even a Jonathan Montague, who could be a deep ball threat. And then obviously the talk of camp was VJ Wilkins, the transfer out of Campbell. This kid's electric.
I thought he went by Rocket.
Yes. Yeah. So he's honestly, to me, he could be another Zay Flowers. You can move him all over the field. You might see him in the backfield. You're going to see him out wide. You're going to see him in the slot. And again, Mac, I don't know if I ever saw him drop a ball in the entire
every practice he balled out. VJ.
So to short answer, Brett, yeah, this receiver room is loaded. I honestly say there's 6-7 deep right now, and that's not an exaggeration.
I kind of don't forgive Halfley for burning Jaden Skeet's red shirt his freshman year just for that bowl game.
Seriously.
So the one thing I worry about with him is staying healthy. But if he can, he's an elite playmaker.
I'm glad you brought up Skeet though, Kev, because like that was my biggest takeaway from the wide receiver group is that, oh yeah, Skeet's back. And I remember him being the talk of last spring and summer because he was able to get those intermediate, out routes and everything. And when you think about last year's offense, I mean, we were able to get some over the top. We're able to do quick slots, but like those like intermediate passes. I mean, when you talk about Skeet, he's so versatile. So if you're able to like take the pressure off of Lewis Bond and like get him to have to just focus on what he does best, and you can have Skeet there, and then the versatility of him with Broom out of the the backfield in VJ Wilkins. I mean, that whole intermediate offensive play game is like full on now.
And I think I was just gonna say, and I think you're forgetting Ty Lockwood too.
100%.
And the tight ends.
I was thinking we were going to get to tight ends. But also just on Reed Harris, I am going to take my victory lap because he was my other guy last April. And he exploded in the spring game.
Don't worry. I took enough of a victory lap for the both of us. Like, you're good.
Yeah, you and Brett were
that kid has a chance to be a superstar. He's so big. He can go up and get it. He outmuscles everybody. I honestly think you're talking like Zay Flowers type draft pick at some point. But on the tight ends, equally as deep. Ty Lockwood looked the part. This might be the best tight end room since Hunter Long was here. And I've been saying that for 3 years now, and it just hasn't worked out. But there's a couple kids that have come in and just haven't, done anything. Like a Ty Barry, I think it was, if I'm remembering the name right. But you still have Jeremiah Franklin, who's just Mr. Reliable. Just a good blocker, a good veteran guy. This kid Boltonwood, I can't remember his first name right now. And then Jasinski's kid, Kalen, came on and had a fantastic end of the spring. So 3-4 deep there as well, in my opinion.
That's crazy. Yeah, and then Alex Broom's back this year, right?
I was going to say that running back room, second favorite for me, but besides the receivers, you have Jordan McDonald, you have Turbo Richard, however he pronounces it. Alex Broom, I'm stunned at how good he looked in camp. Coming off the injury that he had, explosive, quick cuts, a couple, maybe more than a couple, 4 or 5 long touchdown runs in team periods during scrimmages. And that's only 3 of the guys. Again, you could put Wilkins back there if you want to. You still have Mekhi Dodd and Bo McCormick coming in from high school. Right. So that again, it's 5-6 deep in that room too. I feel like I'm missing someone else too. I can't think of who it might be, like another veteran. Oh, Datrell Jones, who had a phenomenal year last year. So again, 5, 6, 7 deep in that room too.
Who's the front runner or the front two?
So Mac, you might disagree with me on this. I think it's 1A, 1B right now between Richard and McDonald. I honestly think it's, and honestly, you could put all 3 of him, Broom in there too, and you could start any of them at any point. Like they're very versatile. They all do something different, but if I had to say one guy right now, it's probably Richard.
The thing is, I I'm a Turbo guy, and I think Turbo can develop into an every down back. But like you were saying, Kev, because you're like 6-7 deep, you have the advantage right now to have, specialists on certain downs. So depending on the offense they run, and with Bill O'Brien's offense would attest to this. Like you want, running play or have the threat of an out route, for like you have Brum, who's like a really good catching running back. Then you have Turbo, who can just, use his body to rush it down the middle. So you have versatility there and you have depth. I mean, that running back room is as deep as we ever seen it. It's the same way of how shocked we were with the quarterbacks. It's like we've never seen this amount of depth, and it will be super interesting. I think Turbo, because of the upside with him, he would be like my front runner, but it's not like you have 1, 2, 3, like you're saying, Kev. You have 1A, 1B, 1C, to be honest.
Jordan McDonald's another guy that I took far too many victory laps on.
He's good, man.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's very fast to the outside too. Like that SMU game, he was phenomenal.
He came on late last year as a RB4, right? He was like RB4, and then
hell, I'd even throw
Anthony. He had a huge Syracuse game.
I'd even throw Anthony Facillo in that group. Like you might see him run the ball a few times. Big, powerful kid. Like they're so deep there, it's not even funny.
It's so deep, and like you were saying, Kev, like Brum, I think went to the house like 4 or 5 times in the spring. Like I'm talking like 90, 80-yard runs, like to the house.
Long runs, really.
And then we're talking so solidly on those top 3, 4, 5 running backs. But then, like you said, we're going to get Bo this summer, who we haven't even seen in camp, who's got all the rushing, exactly, in Massachusetts. I've never got to see him in person, but everyone's saying he's an immediate impact guy. He could start as a true freshman if he wanted to. So think about that. Again, they might decide to really develop him up, and they don't have to use him yet. But you have impact players coming in that could make an impact as a true freshman. So so much depth at running back. That's an awesome place to be for right now for BC.
I meant Anthony Ferrucci, not Facillo. That's the Belmont Hill lacrosse coach. So but no,
of course.
No, they're deep, man. It's even, and again, it's one of those things. Even with injuries, you should be fine there, no matter who goes down.
It's pretty cool when it's like you have an embarrassment of riches at some of the most important positions in football for a change. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And when does summer practice start? End of July?
Yeah, something like that. Early August.
Yeah, something like that, I think. Before we roll into like any NFL draft stuff, I wanted to any other players outside of the people that we saw? I think we pretty much mentioned. I know VJ Wilkins had a great practice. Was there anyone outside of the main people that BC should start paying attention to? I know we probably talked about that or mentioned that, but nothing's coming to my head right now. But is there anyone names that we have not even talking about, not on the radar at all, that kind of came up in spring?
Well, we should mention the secondary because I think they're elite. They have the chance to be absolutely elite. And that we didn't see Amari Jackson once during camp, but guys like Isaiah Ferris, Omar Thornton, I know I'm going to miss his name.
The freshman.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Max Tucker just sort of flew under the radar. Again, I know I'm missing a name or two as well. But all of them were making plays throughout camp. They made life hard on those receivers. And that's we just talked up the receivers. So those are not easy covers for those guys. That group is equally as deep, I think, as the running backs or the receivers. I honestly do. And especially if that defensive line is as good as I think it is, and the pass rush gets home, and those guys can go jump routes quicker, you're looking at an elite secondary, I think, this year.
That was the best performing group, I think, of the spring ball was the secondary. I mean, they were consistent. Every single practice they showed up and made like a couple interceptions. They were running around the field like crazy. And I think that's the biggest point to take from the secondary. You would have thought it was, you would have thought it would have been like, Max Tucker and all these players that you were used to seeing that balled out last year, but it was these other guys stepping up and these freshmen stepping up in the secondary where you have Tim Lewis is just not only developing these guys, but getting them to really just like, go attack. And it's really, really, really cool thing to watch.
We didn't even mention KP Price either at safety.
Right. That's so crazy.
He can lay the boom on anybody coming over the middle. So they're going to be good there.
Is
to-
there a second safety? Like beside, I know because KP Price, he started all 13 games at a strong safety. Is there a kind of like a second safety that you got, either Mac or Kevin, that you guys have an eye on that you think will be starting most games?
For me, it's probably Cam Martinez, but I could also see him being just a quarterback too. He can move him around. One kid that stood out to me and had a few interceptions was Charlie Comella from Wellesley.
Okay.
I covered him. I think he's a sophomore now, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a redshirt freshman. But this kid was a ball hawk in camp, and I really only remember him as a receiver playing for Wellesley High School. And I'm sure he obviously played secondary, but he stood out a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if you hear that name pretty early and often heading into the season.
Yeah, I would say another one that we didn't talk, like Ashton Cunningham, the freshman. He balled out like crazy this spring, and I think I would probably agree with you. Like Martinez probably is going to be that starting like middle or safety guy. But like I will say, the one nice thing about Hafley was he did recruit a lot of these guys, and he was able to have at least versatility in that scheme. And I think that definitely benefited Tim Lewis and what he's trying to develop the last year, and then going into this year, is that a lot of these guys can move from safety and different positions on the secondary. So they're able to like cover the whole field and understand, the scheme that he's trying to go with. So I think that's why we're seeing such like upside with this secondary so early in development, and especially with these freshmen and sophomores.
Do we even bother with special teams or no?
Hell yeah. Special teams at Boston College, you have to talk special teams. You have this is the only school in the country, Division 1, 2, or 3, where you have to talk about a punter and get excited about a punter.
I heard our guys, he's in the roof.
So, and again, Mac, you can attest to this. I'm obviously not a special teams coach by any means, obviously. I have no idea what the hell they're working on. So we don't know what to watch for when the ball is hitting the roof. Like, we can guess of who the punter is going to be, but if they're trying to work on certain stuff for, coffin corner kicks or whatever it might be, and the ball is hitting the freaking roof, we don't know what's going on. So, look, the field goal competition was impressive. It's either going to be Liam Connor or Luca Lombardo. Both guys are very good. I was pretty much shocked that Andy Quinn didn't kick a single competitive field goal.
Really?
But it's either going to be him or Yale transfer Seamus Florio at punter. But again, Mac and I would stand there. It's like, oh, the ball sounded good, but it hits the roof. Like, awesome. Like, that doesn't help. So, look, it can't be any worse than last year, no matter who it is, right?
At least he's hitting the roof. That was the problem last year. Yeah,
like either punter or kicker. It can't be any worse. I would love to see a return game, though. Like, we've heard for years, Zay was supposed to be that guy. The kid who got hurt last year, I'm blanking on his name right now. Speedy guy, he came in as a transfer.
McGowan.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, from SEC. Yeah.
He was supposed to be a big return guy, right? So that part of the game, they need, like, this offense can be so good if they're starting on, say, the 35 instead of the 25, or the 40 instead of the 25. So I think that return game is going to be huge this year. But in terms of kicking, it can't be any worse. Like, we can't physically go through that again.
I'll say the most exciting thing I'm looking forward to the most in summer's practice is being outside and finally seeing Andy Quinn be able to punt the ball and see how far it goes, because he's been booming it and hit. But again, like Kev said, he's hitting the ceiling. I would agree with the kicker. I think I'm pushing. I think Liam Connor probably to be the kicker. I think he might be, but both of them are competing back and forth, and Lombardo might have a stronger leg. I'm not sure. I'm basically I'm making a Grayson James argument here. I'm going off of last year because Liam Connor did kick like a 50-yard field goal, and I'm just going off of that. But I think, like, when you talk about return game too, Kev, do you think who do you think is going to be back there? Do you think VJ might be back there to get him? Like, what is your feeling on who's going to be back there, taking like kickoffs and like punts?
It could be up to 5 guys, I think. Like,
Yeah.
I think Isaiah Ferris is probably the main bet.
Right.
VJ,
Right.
you got to at least give VJ a look there if you're them. Like, he's too fast not to.
Right. And I think he took them in Campbell, right? I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, hell, throw Alex Broom back there. He's a quick cutter. You make one guy miss and he's gone. There's a handful of guys that probably take it or could take it, but
Yeah.
if I had to, put money on it on April, whatever this is, I'd say Isaiah Ferris probably.
What's our draft? I know you said in the pregame show there's four guys that should get drafted. What's kind of the outlook? I know you kind of have a little bit more, especially covering the Patriots and NFL. So what does it kind of look like from the prospects perspective with the BC kids?
So it's weird. Donovan has seemingly dropped out of a lot of first rounds. Like, if you guys remember around the combine, his name was everywhere. Like, he exploded onto the scene. So I'm not sure where he goes. I still, in my heart of hearts, I think he goes to Philadelphia late in that first round.
32. Yeah.
It's just it's perfect for
Jack would like that too.
Yeah.
Hey, we need an edge. We need an edge.
So that's the thing. He's a perfect fit.
Yeah. Especially if a couple of those other like higher up edges go early. I could definitely see Donovan going there.
If it was up to all of us, I'd love to see the Patriots trade back into the first round and go steal him late. I don't think that's going to happen, but Ozzy, I think, goes second round early. There's going to be a run on tackles at some point. You guys know you can never have too many offensive linemen. So
right,
the kid's freaking 6'8". Like, you want that size on your team. And you guys all know he's just a great kid. Like, he's a perfect locker room guy. Same thing can be said for Donovan, Drew Kendall as well. I think he goes a little bit later, probably 4 or 5. Another guy who'd be a perfect fit. Same as Ozzy, he'd be a perfect fit here in New England as well. I think he might be more realistic to land here. And then who am I missing? Nenawak Paula. Like, we were joking before the show. If it wasn't for Donovan, he would have had so much more attention. At least I think he's a beast off the edge when he's healthy. When he's healthy is the key phrase there. But I'd expect those 4 guys to all go by early day 3 minimum. And then one guy I keep an eye on is Cam Arnold. Like, that guy he's a freak of nature. He's a specimen in terms of being an athlete. He got hurt towards the end of, I think he played 7 games last year, but he was on pace for a hell of a year. So he's sort of my outside the box BC guy. Cam Horsley, I'm just not sure. He probably goes 4th-ish round, 5th-ish round, but I think you're going to hear and see a lot of Eagles on over the course of this weekend.
Yeah,
it's a great look. It's a great look for the BC brand, and I think. And Kev, because you're a Patriots guy and you cover the Patriots, I mean, doesn't Trapillo feel like the ultimate like Patriot? Like, I feel 100%. Like I honestly am like 50-50 he's going to the Patriots. I don't see how he slips by Vrabel, to be honest. But what is your thinking on? Do you have the same feeling on that? Because I think Trapillo's like you might as well just keep him here in Boston.
I've been saying it since like last December. Look, if they don't take Will Campbell, and I don't really need to get in the weeds on draft talk for the Patriots here, but if they don't take Campbell and they go with a skill guy, receiver, tight end, Ashton Genty even, I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's a realistic possibility. They use that 38th pick if he's still there on him. If not, they move that pick and try to get up to make sure they get him. Mike Vrabel, I can't remember if you guys were at the pro day or not, but he was just staring those guys down for like an hour. And he's obviously got the ties, so any little bit of extra information he can get off a bill, he's going to use. And don't forget, this staff, I know it's a completely different Patriot staff, but people that are still in the building have been around BC for years now. Like, we saw Gerard Mayo at spring practice 3 years ago. And obviously he's not here anymore, but people that are in that war room this weekend are. So they have intel on this BC team or these BC prospects that a lot of teams they can get, but maybe not as in-depth as BC can. So frankly, I'll be surprised if one of them doesn't end up here. Especially with the Doug Marrone tie too.
Him and Kendall, I feel like they're gonna somehow find a way here.
Yeah, I have to think Doug Marrone pounds the table for one of them.
Yeah, right. He was here last year, and then just thinking of Donovan, because obviously Donovan's the big talk of the draft. I mean, there is such a wide range of, does he go 22nd or does he go early in the second round? Who knows? But from a BC fan perspective, you're just hoping some of those early teams take some edges, and then the thing is, if that happens, you can see him flying up that draft list. So excited about that for him. He's such, and we talk about great character guys. Every one of these players we're talking about is great character guys, and Donovan's at the top of all of them. Such a genuinely great guy and rep for BC. So excited going into this weekend for the draft. For these two, or for these five.
And then the listeners, I mean, the YouTube viewers won't get a commercial break, but the listeners are going to get one after this. But I just want to shout out Jack for creating just such a in-depth, amazing agenda.
That was awesome. It helped me out.
And when we come back from this, we're gonna give him the floor to really dig into the basketball, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it's phenomenal. And we're back.
We're back.
Jack, the basketball roster. I mean, everyone can speak on this. Kevin, Mac too. It's better.
Yeah, I mean, we have a team now. Actually, we have bodies. We're gonna have people on that bench.
It's a good start.
No, but seriously, I mean, it definitely was a slow start for Earl & Company in the portal. Shaw was the guy from Mizzou, was the first get in the portal, and he's like that TJ Bickerstaff type, athletic, power forward. He'll be a good guy on the boards, throw down some lobs. I think that's actually a great get. Gets us more athletic. I mean, you saw how thin we were at the front court last year.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good get. And then all of a sudden, you got the guy from Butler too. Kevin, we were talking about this before the show. He's a beast. He's like 6'11", 250. Kind of like, no one's gonna come in and be Quentin Post, but I mean, he's like a solid body to have in your front court rotation. And then like 4 days ago, we get the back-to-back of Jason Asamoah from Baylor, who's an athletic wing, 6'8". He'll probably play small forward, power forward for us. So really good to get some athleticism on the wing, because that's something BC really does not get. I mean, Prince of Liegbe really should have been that and just never panned out. And to be fair to Asamoah, I mean, he played pretty sparingly at Baylor, only averaged about 2 points a game, but you really hope that in a scaled-up role that he can kind of step into the role the way Prince of Liegbe, showed flashes of, but could never really. And then the kind of the cherry on top was probably, as of right now, your starting point guard, which is Chase Forte from South Dakota. I think he's like by far my favorite get. Like, he led the team points and assists. I think he was like 17-4, and was the conference defensive player of the year as well. So he's, I think, of the Jaden Zachary type mold of he's a defending guard. He's a little lengthier, a little taller, a little more athletic than Jay-Z was. But I think with the last 4 days with Asamoah and Forte coming, I think you're really starting to see some talent fill out in this roster, which I think is really encouraging, especially after we've been, rightfully so, shitting on the team the past 5 months. So it's really good to see some hope on the roster.
I mean, this has the potential to be the best point guard that BC's had scoring wise, probably since Kai Bowman.
I mean, to be fair to Jaden Zachary, he averaged double digits all 3 years he was here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't want to, he is like, he put up numbers in, I don't even know what conference South Dakota's in, but he put up numbers at a lower level. But, if he scales up against competition, which I think he really will, he's so athletic, so long, great defender. He really, he has that potential. I mean, I don't want to fall into the Deion Brown trap again. We saw him, he put up numbers at UMBC, and then, didn't exactly translate to the ACC. But I think of these 4 transfers, I think they all bring something different to the table. And I think Earl's really filling out this roster using a couple different ways. Like you have your Power 5 transfers, you have your guy that you're bringing up from a G5 school. So I think Earl's looking at this from a couple different ways, and I think I really do like how he's kind of filled out the roster, especially considering the number of holes that he had after last season.
Jack, based on the upgrades, sorry, Brett.
No, you're good.
Based on the upgrades, there's no way they can miss the ACC tournament again, right?
Well, there's always a way, Kevin.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, because I mean, this year, they finished 17th. They were, they weren't even close. They were 2 wins out of the tournament. I think this year, they're far more talented. And I think last year, I mean, they even, for how bad they were, they should not have missed the ACC tournament. Like they had games that they blew. They
Right.
probably should have won, another 2-3 games in the conference. So I think with the talent that they have this year, I think, they should be in the tournament pretty comfortably, or I won't say comfortably, but I do think they will be in the ACC tournament because it would really suck to go 0-2 in the first 2 years of the ACC's kind of expansion. But yeah, I'm very positive on how the roster is looking today compared to 2 weeks ago.
And then you guys know I'm not a huge basketball guy, but I'll ask all of you: is Earl Grant done if they don't make the tournament?
Yes.
Finally.
Yeah.
We were talking about Mac and I were kind of chewing on this the end of last episode, but if I had to guess, I think the administration probably has an unrealistic standard for Earl to meet if he wants to stay, and especially like given how bad last year went.
Is it just a buyout?
Well, his buyout is he'll have 3 after next year. I think he'll have 3 more years left on his deal, which is still a hefty buyout. So we've been talking about this the last couple of months. Like, if you're university admin, like what do you do? Like, especially given like the precarious situation that BC is within, the realignment power conferences. So if that buyout is something they're willing to do, I think it's tournament or bust really for Earl. But yeah, I mean, with that said, I think he's gonna have these guys, like they're a much more athletic team than they were last year. He's gonna have an Earl Grant team for however many flaws they have, they're always gonna play hard. And I think this is like the kind of team that allows you to play to play in that way, in ways that last year's couldn't really. But so yeah, I do think that they will make the ACC tournament. NCAA tournament has been the last decade and a half a bit tougher, but I think they'll definitely be an improved squad for next year.
I mean, I would say their 2 biggest down. I mean, they had a lot of negatives from last year's roster, but I would say the 2 biggest ones were the fact that they were very unathletic and they had no size, and that's 2 things.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a small team, you got to be able to get out, run, have athletes on the wing, and BC just didn't.
And that's 2 areas they really addressed. I mean, what 3 of their transfers are all big kids, not to mention a couple of the incoming freshmen too.
Yeah, I mean Shaw, Kapke, 2 really good guys. I think that'll provide front court depth right away. And Asamoah, I think he's a 6'8" wing. He's gonna give BC something that they don't normally have, which is athleticism at the wing. Because we're so like even in the years that 23, 24, when they really had, you could see them see those teams making a tournament run. Those teams never really had that. They had Jay-Z, Claudel, Mason, guards, and then you had Devin McLaughlin, QP, which are guys that play on the block. You never had that kind of in between game, which, like I said before, probably should have been Prince of League Bay. That's what they wanted out of him, but he didn't pan out that way. So I think Asamoah, to be fair, he played sparingly at Baylor, but I think that's kind of what Earl's targeting there, and I think he has like the potential to kind of give BC that athleticism on the wing that for so often kind of eludes them.
My question, guys, is if you're looking at this team as the talent it has right now, as it should be an ACC tournament team, maybe like bottom of the middle of the pack or something like that. They have enough talent, for that, right? What else do they need to do, or do you guys not see like it realistic that they are going to make any more moves? But what else do they need to do to really get fans excited? Because I think this at least got
fire the coach.
I mean,
that
right.
will get people excited, yeah. But
I think, is there anything outside of this? Because I feel like people just open their eyes at least after these moves, but they're not like excited, right? So like, what is the thing that they could do to like positionally, or are we just hoping for the ACC tournament?
I mean, I will say, technically speaking, they're using 13 scholarships. I'm pretty sure they can go up to 15, but I don't think that they're going to do that. I think the team is going to be what it is now, barring some crazy some player transferring or whatever. I think that the team is going to be what we're seeing now on the agenda. So I mean, in terms of moves or what they can do, it's really out of their control right now. I think the way that Earl makes his team appealing to BC fans is just having a team that plays hard, is athletic, gets out, runs, because that's what he wanted to do last year. That's the kind of style that he would have had to play to be successful, and he just didn't have the personnel for that. And I think he does this year with guys like Shaw, Shaw is like an unbelievable athlete. He's like 6'9", lean. He's really does things with the ball that not many guys that come to BC can, between him and Asamoah especially. So I think they have the personnel to play in a way that can get fans excited, and they play in a way that will allow them to compete with teams in the middle to upper levels of the ACC. Because last year, how many games did we walk into and we're like, yeah, we got no shot. I mean, we got Roger McFarland 6'4" guarding Cooper Flagg. Like, that's just not then there's no conceivable way that they can even compete. This team at least has like the athleticism, the size to where you can see them competing with some of those upper level teams. So I think that's something to draw BC fans in.
That's my answer though, because like obviously if that is the reality and they're going to be like maybe an ACC tournament team, okay, so what do you got to do at the end of the next year, right? That's fire Grant, and then it becomes a question of, I want to bring Kevin on this question because this is something we've all talked about for a while now. Then it comes down to Father Jack sitting there making this decision of, okay, I have to fire Earl. What is it that I can do? What is it that I have to do now to get this program back? And how am I allocating the resources? Because if you have Bill O'Brien here, this is a good ROI, and I talked about this in previous podcasts, and I'm throwing resources here, and I have a certain limited amount of resources. Like, if it takes like all this NIL money, like to compete with the SECs of the world, what am I doing here? Like, what are the moves I got to make? So I don't know. Like, Kev, do you have any thoughts on just like, it seems very dire for the BC basketball program, and then but it's not like in a vacuum situation, because what BC does with the football program and how that influences resources and how they're allocated, and with the new president, Father Jack, coming in, there's a lot in play here, and I'm just curious if you have any take on that at all.
So I'll answer your question with a question. You guys sort of understand the BC landscape, sort of the upper tier, better than I do. Why the delay in Father Jack leaving? Because I think that hurts every program. If you have a guy waiting in the wings who cares about sports more than the current guy, get that guy out of there and get this guy in. But clearly there's a process and all that kind of stuff. So my question would be, what are you waiting for if you want to make things better, ultimately?
I think that's the biggest thing, is like, because Leahy's on his way out, like he's not going to make that decision. So it's kind of like you have a lame duck president and a lame duck head basketball coach, and it's kind of like kicking the can down to the next guy, kind of like almost leaving it to him. Because I mean, we all know that Leahy doesn't necessarily care about athletics, at least not in the capacity that we would like him to as, sports fans. But yeah, I mean, I would say that's like my biggest thing. And Father Jackie does seem to be very big on athletics, specifically football. And, I tend to believe that he cares about the basketball program and getting it back to a sustainable level of, some success. Because, we've all seen it before. It's not like this basketball program has just been atrocious for our entire lives. There was a point in time where it was a very competent program and was going to the NCAA tournament on a yearly basis. It's just, we're on our fourth era of a head coach trying to replicate Al Skinner's success, which we're coming up on 20 years ago now. So, yeah.
And Kevin, just to answer your question about why they're having Father Leahy, like have this like 1 year tour before they bring in Father Jack, it's because they're not thinking about sports. Like, honestly, a normal like school at the Power 4 level would be thinking, how is this going to play athletically and the brand and everything. But honestly, that's clearly a Father Leahy decision where he's putting the school and the different departments, the educational departments, at the forefront of that decision, and not sport and not Father Jack, which, the nicest thing about the decision, I would say, isn't the process, because that makes no sense to me either, why you would delay it a year. But at least you have Father Jack in here, but coming in, which you would hope that if ever the day came where they had another president from Father Jack wouldn't be making that same decision. Because to be honest, that wasn't a sports decision or like a decision with the BC Athletics department at top of mind. That was Father Leahy doing what he's been doing before, which is, in his mind, leading BC with, all with educational purpose at the forefront, not necessarily BC Athletics.
So I get it, but it just, to me, if you want your programs to start raking in money and bring the fan bases back the way they were in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, it feels like the best thing would just be make that change as soon as possible. But I get it. There's more logistics to it than that. I get it. But look, Earl Grant could easily take himself off the hot seat by not coaching his team out of games last year. Like, you always hear the saying, coaches can't win games if they can lose them. He single-handedly lost 2 games last year. So he's not void of blame by any means. It's just, the entire situation just seems very weird to me in terms of the overall, I guess, progression of how things work with the school. But look, everybody has their own system, I guess.
Yeah. And Mac, you brought up how, the type of coaching hire what the administration can do to bring that Bill O'Brien level excitement to like the basketball program.
Yeah.
And there's really not much, honestly, because Bill O'Brien basically fell in the lap of Blake James. It was a perfect situation for, all parties involved, down to the fact that Bill O'Brien having like a son with special needs that, needs access to hospitals, Bill O'Brien being from the area. That kind of guy doesn't really exist, or not, at least I'm not thinking of any guy who's like an experienced coach, ties to the Boston area. I mean, I guess you could say Rick Pitino, but Rick Pitino's, he's not going anywhere. St. John's is that guy's last stop. He's not coming to BC.
Yeah.
They need a name.
Yeah, and I don't know what that name would be. So I think that might be why they're hesitant. First, Blake James signed this coach to a 4-year extension after he won 20 games, or after he won 17 games in 2023. So there's that. But
you're so right, Jack.
But by the side, I don't know if I'm sure they have candidates in mind, but they're probably not married to a guy, because that name, that Bill O'Brien type name, isn't really out there. So I mean, I don't know. That could be like something that is like, because like there's probably thinking like, well, why would we pay $6 million to just bring in like the coach of Merrimack, who he's a great coach. He brought Merrimack into semi-relevancy and making the tournament, but that's not putting tons of butts in the seats. That's not getting clicks online. So I mean, that's probably just how they're justifying it to themselves. They're saying like, that guy's not out there. I'm not going to foot this $6 million bill just to be in the same spot again next year, or have the chance of that. So I think that's probably where that hesitancy to move is coming from. Again, I could be completely wrong. They could have a guy in mind that maybe fell through. I don't know.
Well, there's candidates who were advised by their agents that if the job did come available, do not interview for it.
Yeah, and
Like-
you don't have to be some high-powered super agent to know BC hasn't made the tournament in 15 years and their president doesn't give a shit about the athletic department. Like, I mean, to be honest, like, it'd be great if, Richard Pitino or the guy from McNeese State, if they interviewed for the BC job or they showed interest, but like, it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell to like an
Very
established
tough
coach.
sell.
So,
Very tough sell.
it's a tough spot for.
I think it comes down to, though, again, Father Jack coming in, unless he's ready to be like, bringing you in and you have, $8-10 million to spend, which is unthinkable right now for BC, right? And until you're ready to like put the checkbook behind your hire, who's going to come here? And then you say, but even outside of that draw, even if you were to throw money at the problem, like you said, Brett, like it's been 15 plus years or whatever since we've been in the tournament. You're in a pro sports town, and the fandom is at an all-time low.
Hey, Jack, to your point about the Bill O'Brien thing, there's some luck involved here too, because remember how late that Hafley got fired? Like, that almost didn't happen. He was with the.
Oh, we got lucky because he didn't get fired. He got swept up by the.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
He took the Green Bay job, but
thank God for Green Bay.
Yeah. You just saved me from a bunch of rants online, so thank you for that. But in terms of just the timing of everything, like BC, if they would move on from Earl Grant, you now need to get lucky and hope that another name is out there in that cycle. So it's not easy to do, but if they miss another tournament, I mean, look, I was 16 when they made the tournament last. I'm 37 now. Like, that's way too long. That's ridiculous. So it needs to happen at some point if they don't, but there needs to be some luck involved as well.
It was then to make the tournament.
Brett,
Brett, you got all fuzzy again. But that just might be Brett's.
Okay.
This has been a Eagles Weekly tradition when he gets towards the end of the podcast.
Unceremonious exits from Brett.
We talk about basketball. And it's the same thing like pretty much every week. But because we have you, I know you cover the Lomans lacrosse team, and they just started their playoff run. They're going into the ACC tournament. They just murdered their first opponent. But I want to get because you cover them, your overall perspective on the team, how deep you think they're going to go, because it looks like they're going all the way. And then your kind of preview to not only the ACC tournament, which they're in right now, but to the NCAAs.
If they don't make it to Gillette Stadium, which is where the Final Four for both the men and women are this year, something went wrong. That's with a caveat. That's if they see North Carolina before the Final Four, because that was obviously their only loss this year, and it's really the only team that can hang with them. They just beat Virginia 17-7 today after beating them 24-11 a week ago. Wow. Like, you don't beat a team that badly twice in a week or so. So they're an absolute wagon. And Keisha Walker, I've written this several times over the years. She is one of the best recruiters, not just in lacrosse, but in all of college sports. If you look at the talent that she's brought in and just the consistency, I think it's something like 12 straight Final Fours or some stupid number like that. That shouldn't happen.
I think she's running on 7 straight trips to the Natty.
The final.
Yeah, it's like
insane.
With the amount of turnover, just natural turnover in college sports, never mind the portal, that shouldn't happen. So, A, it's a testament to people wanting to play for her and wanting to come to BC, and 2, just the amount of talent or the talent that she recognizes when she's out recruiting. Look, she's the U.S. national coach for a reason. Like, she's one of the best to do it right now, again, in any sport, in my opinion. So they're an absolute wagon. That national championship game last year, I think I've said that to both of you. I've been around lacrosse, men and women, my whole life, and that's one of the best games I've ever seen. They're a fun product to watch. You guys see it when they came home last year for the rally, the championship rally, and there was a lot of people there. They have a ton of support. Gillette will be packed with BC fans if they make it. So they're one of the most fun teams that I've ever covered, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. So yeah, they should roll through the ACC, or at least until they get to most likely North Carolina on Sunday, going for a three-peat, and then I'd expect they host a couple of playoff games and make a run to Gillette. So man, they're really fun to cover.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this run they're about to go on. And it's funny because I think we're at football practice, the one game that they lost. And I remember us like kind of briefly talking about this. We're like, honestly, this might be good because they just dominated every single team, like start to finish. And like that loss might be good. And look, they haven't lost yet since that loss. And then just been completely blowing out every team. So you're kind of looking at this like, I don't expect them to maybe lose another game this season until they maybe get to the finals, and we'll see even if that happens. But like you're saying, Natasha Walker, like one of the greatest coaches in sports right now. And when we talk about NIL and the transfer portal, there's no one in sports that's done it better than her the last, I don't know, 11, but the last even the few years with everyone, all the talent she's been able to bring here and go to what you just said, Jack, 7 finals, 7 for 7 of the last 7 national championships she's been in, her team's been in. Just an incredible program. So yeah, I enjoy your coverage on that because that team needs more coverage. So yeah, one of the best programs, not only for BC, definitely their best program, but one of the best college programs in the country.
It really is silly when you think about it, like 7 straight. And thank God they won last year, because if they lost, they'd be 1-6 in those 7, and then that would be a whole thing. But yeah, Matt, we talked about this last week, where that UNC loss is like, it's so nice when you're so good that you can be like, oh, we kind of needed that loss, like it's good for the locker room. But
right before the playoffs, let's lose.
Yeah, a little loss right before the playoffs. But
it's funny too, because they were up 17-7 late in the game, and Acacia was pissed on the sideline today. Like she is the ultimate perfectionist, and that's why they're so good.
I love that vibe. That's my favorite thing about a coach. We see that in, like, you saw that with like Bill Belichick and everything. I think that's like my pinned tweet on BC Football Fans, is that when Bill was like yelling at his players up 15 points. I mean, that's the coaching. That's the mentality of getting your team to buy in. When you're down, when you're up a lot, it doesn't matter. You're going all in. And that's when you look at the coach, when you look at Acacia and what she's been able to do and her players and having to developing them with that mindset, it's so amazing. It's so amazing to watch. So yeah, I'm going to try and go to Gillette with Kevin, and we'll try and make more coverage of this team on Eagles Daily, because they deserve it. They're just an incredible wagon right now for the last 12 years.
Will they host in the NCAA tournament, like the first 2 rounds, or how does that work?
Yeah, so they'd host the first 2.
Okay, yeah,
yeah, over in Newton.
It's kind of nice. They can the whole you play the whole tournament and not have to leave your dorm if you're them.
And they deserve it.
They get huge crowds over there too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hell yeah, Kev. I mean, I don't know someone, honestly, we've met. Oh, Brett's going to hop out right now. So he can do a full kind of recap of this, but I just want to reiterate, you're one of the best of the biz as far as, I've only met you a couple years ago, and, you always show up. Again, you've been incredible for me as a colleague to like bounce off ideas and all these different things. So I just, again, shout out to you, and I reiterate this to the fans watching. Go follow Kev, and I tweeted this out. You don't have to agree with him, but you got to respect him, because he's one of the best in the biz, and he's one of the only ones covering everything BC right now. So yeah, go follow Kev at New England Football Journal, and also at on Rivals BC.
I appreciate it, man. You guys have all been great to work with over the last few years, and it's nice when you guys are around to actually have somebody to shoot the shit with at practice when nobody else is there. So it's been a pleasure. This took way too long for me to get on. I know we've been talking about this literally for 2 years. So Always a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you guys soon.
Yeah, I'll have to have you back on, Kev. Thanks again, my friend, and I'll see you soon, and we'll talk soon, of course.
Oh yeah, appreciate it, boys.
Awesome.